In the quiet town of Asheville, North Carolina, lived a woman named Emily Carter, a 30-year-old event planner who loved her structured life. Everything about her world was neat, from the white curtains she ironed every Sunday to the planners she carried everywhere. Emily believed that with enough organization, nothing could ever go wrong. She was known in town for creating the most beautiful events, weddings, charity galas, community gatherings, every detail perfectly arranged. But life, as she would soon learn, doesn't always stick to a plan. One chilly Friday morning in October, Emily sat by her desk, sipping her coffee and going through her checklist for the Harper Family Charity Gala, one of her biggest projects of the year. The event was scheduled for the weekend, and she wanted everything to be flawless. The decorations were booked, the catering confirmed, and the music arrangements finalized. She looked around her small office with a smile of satisfaction. Just as she was jotting down the final task, her phone buzzed. It was her mother, calling from Denver, Colorado. "Hey, Mom," Emily said cheerfully. "Good morning, sweetheart," her mother replied. "I just wanted to remind you that your cousin Jason is coming to Asheville today." Emily froze mid-sip. "Jason, wait, what? I didn't know about this." "Oh, honey, I told you last month. He's traveling for work and needed a place to stay for a few days. I gave him your address." Emily sighed and looked at her planner as if she could squeeze Jason's visit into the small empty spaces between her busy tasks. "Mom, this weekend is my biggest event of the year. I barely have time to sleep, let alone host a guest." "He won't be any trouble," her mother assured. "Just be kind to him. He's family." Emily groaned softly. "Fine, I'll manage." That afternoon, Emily returned home to prepare for her unexpected guest. She vacuumed the living room, set up the guest room, and made sure there was at least some food in the fridge, though she mostly lived on takeout. As the evening sun faded, she heard the sound of a car pulling into her driveway. She took a deep breath and opened the door. Standing there was Jason Reed, tall, casually dressed, with a friendly smile that carried a hint of mischief. "Hey, cousin," he said, holding up a small duffel bag. "Hope I'm not crashing your weekend." Emily gave him a polite smile. "You kind of are, but come in." Jason laughed, stepping inside. "You haven't changed. Still the queen of schedules. And you still don't believe in them," Emily replied. They both chuckled, easing the initial awkwardness. Jason had always been the free-spirited one in the family, the guy who backpacked across countries, tried new things, and lived without rules. Emily, on the other hand, planned her life down to the minute. It was no surprise they had never been close growing up. As they settled in, Jason looked around the tidy living room. "Wow, everything's spotless. Do you actually live here or is this a model house?" "I like things clean," Emily said with a small grin. "It keeps me sane." He nodded. "Fair enough. I'll try not to ruin the order of your universe." That night, as Emily worked on her event plans at the dining table, Jason walked in holding 2 cups of tea. "Thought you might need this," he said, placing one beside her. She looked up, a bit surprised. "Thanks." "So," he said, leaning against the counter, "what's this big project you're stressing over?" "The Harper Charity Gala," she replied. "It's the biggest event of the season. Everything has to go perfectly." "Sounds intense," Jason said. "Maybe you need to relax a little." "Relaxing can wait until Monday," Emily said without looking up from her notes. Jason smiled. "You haven't changed since high school." The next day came fast. Emily woke up early, her phone already buzzing with calls from vendors. Jason offered to help, but she refused at first. She didn't trust anyone with her work. But by noon, disaster struck. The florist called to inform her that the delivery truck had broken down, delaying all the flower arrangements. Emily's stomach twisted in panic. "No, no, no, this can't happen today," she exclaimed, pacing the living room. Jason, who was sipping coffee nearby, said calmly, "Want me to take a look?" "I'm pretty good with cars." Emily stopped mid-step. "You?" "Yes, me," he said with a grin. I've been working part-time as a mechanic between travel gigs. With no other option, Emily handed him the address of the florist. Within an hour, Jason managed to get the truck running again and personally helped deliver the flowers to the event hall. When Emily arrived to check, she was stunned. "You actually did it," she said, impressed. "You doubted me," Jason teased. "A little," she admitted. "Thanks, though. You saved the day." The rest of the afternoon went smoothly, until the sound technician called in sick. Emily felt her chest tighten again. Before she could panic, Jason stepped forward. "I can handle sound systems. Used to do it for a local band in college." Emily blinked. "Is there anything you can't do?" "Sit still," he replied with a smirk. As the day went on, Jason continued to help, adjusting lights, arranging tables, even cracking jokes that made the nervous staff laugh. For the first time, Emily found herself enjoying the chaos. By evening, the event was ready. The grand hall sparkled with golden lights, floral arrangements filled the air with fragrance, and the atmosphere buzzed with excitement. As guests began arriving, Emily looked around, feeling both exhausted and proud. Jason walked up beside her, dressed neatly in a suit he had borrowed from a local store. "You did it," he said. Emily smiled softly. "We did it. The gala went perfectly." Guests praised every detail, the Harpers thanked her endlessly, and the night ended with applause. But the real surprise came later, when Emily and Jason walked home under the soft glow of the streetlights. "You know," she said, "you completely turned my weekend upside down." Jason grinned. "In a good way or bad way?" She thought for a moment. "Maybe both. I'll take that as a compliment," he said. She laughed. "You know, I never realized how different we are, yet somehow, we make a good team." "That's because you plan," he said, "and I improvise. Together, we balance out." Emily nodded. "Maybe I needed a little bit of chaos in my perfect life. And maybe I needed a little order in mine," Jason replied. As they reached her house, Emily looked at him and said, "You can stay as long as you need, Jason." "Honestly." He smiled warmly. "Thanks, Emily. I might take you up on that. But don't worry, I'll try not to mess up your schedule too much." She laughed, shaking her head. For the first time in years, Emily felt something she hadn't planned, genuine happiness. She realized that sometimes, life doesn't need to follow a checklist to be perfect. Sometimes, the unexpected guest is exactly what you need to remind you that even the best plans can lead to even better surprises. And as she watched Jason step inside with that familiar grin, Emily smiled to herself and whispered, "Maybe not all chaos is bad after all." A week passed since the Harper Charity Gala, and Emily's life seemed to have settled again, or at least she thought it had. Jason was still staying at her house, but somehow, his presence no longer felt like an interruption. He had this way of bringing lightness into every moment, something Emily didn't realize she'd been missing. Every morning, he would make coffee before she even got out of bed, leaving a small sticky note beside her cup with doodles or funny quotes. She never said it out loud, but those little notes made her smile more than she wanted to admit. Monday morning arrived with a new project. Emily's phone buzzed nonstop as clients began booking events for the upcoming holiday season. She was sitting at her desk, tapping on her laptop when Jason poked his head into her office. "Hey, you look like you've been staring at that screen for hours," he said. "I have," Emily replied without looking up. "The winter fundraiser is coming up. It's double the size of the Harper Gala. I can't afford any mistakes." Jason stepped closer. "Well, lucky for you, you've got an assistant now." She raised an eyebrow. "You mean you?" "Exactly. I'm great at moral support, coffee runs, and pretending to understand spreadsheets," he said with a grin. Emily chuckled despite herself. "Fine, but no touching my planner." "That's sacred." "Understood, boss," Jason said playfully, giving her a mock salute before heading to the kitchen. Later that afternoon, Emily was reviewing venue options when she realized something strange. A mix-up in her client's booking had double-scheduled two major events on the same date. She gasped. grabbing her phone to make urgent calls. Jason, noticing her panic, walked in with 2 cups of tea. "Uh-oh, what happened now?" "Disaster," she muttered. "The Johnson wedding and the charity fundraiser are booked for the same weekend at the same venue. I don't know how this happened." Jason set the tea down. "Okay, let's breathe. Can we fix it?" Emily sighed. "I'll have to call both clients and try to move one of them. But that could ruin everything." Jason leaned against the table, thinking for a moment. "What if you don't move either of them?" She looked up sharply. "What do you mean?" "Combine them," he said simply. "Make one big event that benefits both causes. A wedding with a charity angle, like donations in honor of the couple, or a shared theme that ties them together." It could work. Emily blinked in surprise. "That's actually not a terrible idea." Jason grinned. "I'll take that as a compliment." After a few calls and some convincing conversations, Emily managed to get both clients on board. The fundraiser wedding combo became the town's newest idea, unique, meaningful, and efficient. As she hung up the last call, she looked at Jason, shaking her head in disbelief. "I can't believe that worked." "I told you," Jason said, smiling. "Sometimes the best plans come from chaos." That night, Emily cooked dinner, something she rarely did. They sat on the porch, enjoying the cool breeze. The moon was bright, and the air was filled with the smell of pine trees. "You know," she said, stirring her pasta, "I used to think my life had to be perfectly planned to make sense. But since you showed up, everything's been unpredictable, and weirdly, better." Jason smiled softly. "Maybe that's because you finally started living it instead of just organizing it." Emily looked at him for a moment, then laughed. "You sound like one of those motivational speakers." "Hey, I could totally be one," Jason said. "Step 1. Mess up your cousin's schedule. Step 2. Call it personal growth." They both burst out laughing. As the days went on, Jason began helping Emily with small things, carrying boxes, checking lighting setups, even brainstorming creative ideas for themes. He was easy to talk to and full of unexpected wisdom. But there was something else too, moments of silence between them that carried unspoken warmth. One evening, as Emily sat finishing her notes, she noticed Jason sitting quietly by the window, staring outside. "You okay?" she asked. He smiled faintly. "Yeah, just thinking. I've been on the road so long, never really stayed anywhere for more than a few weeks. But this feels different. Feels like home." Emily's heart softened. "You know you can stay as long as you like." Jason turned to her. "Careful, I might take that seriously." "I mean it," she said sincerely. He nodded, his eyes reflecting a quiet gratitude. The following weekend, Emily's combined event, the wedding and charity fundraiser, took place at the Asheville Grand Hall. It was beautiful beyond words. The decorations blended elegance with warmth, and everyone admired the creativity of merging two purposes into one night of celebration and giving. As the music played and laughter filled the hall, Emily stood to the side, watching her vision come to life. Jason appeared beside her, dressed sharply once again. "You did it," he said. "We did it," she corrected. He smiled. "Teamwork looks good on you." "Don't get used to it," she teased. "I still like doing things my way." "I know," Jason replied. "But it's nice to know there's room for surprises too." When the event ended, the Harpers, the Johnsons, and all their guests personally thanked Emily for making the night unforgettable. She could hardly believe how far she had come, from near disaster to triumph, all because of a guest she hadn't planned for. As they packed up decorations later, Emily turned to Jason and said softly, "You really did turn my life upside down." He smiled. "And you fixed it better than it was before." That night, as she watched him laughing with the crew and helping load boxes, Emily realized something: the best moments in life are rarely planned. Sometimes, they just show up at your door, carrying a small duffel bag and a smile that changes everything. And deep down, Emily knew that the story of her unexpected guest was far from over. A few more weeks passed, and the chilly winter air began to wrap Asheville in its quiet calm. Emily found herself adjusting to a new rhythm she hadn't known before. Jason was still there, now part of her everyday routine in a way that felt strangely natural. They shared morning coffee, went grocery shopping together, and even took small evening walks around the neighborhood after dinner. Emily, who used to live by her to-do lists and alarm reminders, realized that her planner now had space for spontaneity, and she liked it. One morning, as she sat by the kitchen window, sipping her coffee, Jason walked in holding his laptop. "Hey," he said, "remember that charity contact you worked with last time? They just emailed me. Apparently, they're looking for volunteers for their community outreach program." Emily looked up. "You're thinking of joining?" He smiled. "Yeah, I figured it's time to do something meaningful while I'm here." "That's great," she said sincerely. "I think you'd be good at it. You want to come too?" he asked. She hesitated. "I don't know. My schedule can survive a few hours of kindness," Jason finished with a grin. Emily rolled her eyes but smiled. "Fine, but only because I don't trust you to fill out the volunteer forms correctly." Jason laughed. "Deal." That weekend, they both joined the program, helping distribute winter supplies to families in need. It wasn't part of Emily's job, but it gave her a different kind of satisfaction. Watching Jason interact so effortlessly with everyone made her realize how his energy drew people in. He joked with kids, carried boxes, and even managed to convince a grumpy old man to smile. When the event ended, Emily stood by the car, watching Jason wave goodbye to a group of children. "You're good with people," she said as he walked back. "I've always liked connecting with folks," he said, shrugging. "When you travel a lot, you learn to find stories in everyone you meet." Emily nodded slowly. "Maybe that's why. You so easily. Including you," he teased. She smirked. "Don't push your luck." But deep down, she knew he was right. Somewhere along the way, she had started trusting him, more than she'd expected. Days turned into weeks, and life continued to surprise her. One morning, Emily received a call from a potential client, a huge opportunity to plan a corporate event for a major tech company in Charlotte. It would be the biggest project of her career. She hung up the phone, excitement flooding her face. "Jason, you won't believe this," she called out. He came running from the living room. "What happened?" "A big firm in Charlotte wants me to organize their end-of-year gala. It's huge, like, career-changing huge." Jason grinned. "That's amazing. You deserve it. I need to visit Charlotte next week for the meeting," she said, already thinking through her plans. "It's a few hours away. I'll drive you," Jason offered immediately. She looked at him. "You don't have to. I want to," he said simply. And so, the following week, they set off early in the morning, with Jason behind the wheel and Emily reviewing her presentation notes. The drive was filled with music, laughter, and the kind of easy silence that only existed between people who truly enjoyed each other's company. When they reached Charlotte, Emily attended her meeting while Jason explored the city. The meeting went perfectly, and the company agreed to hire her for the project. That evening, as they sat in a quiet cafe downtown, Emily finally relaxed. "I can't believe how well that went," she said, smiling across the table. "I can," Jason replied. "You're incredible at what you do." "You've been saying that a lot lately," she teased. "Because it's true," he said. She smiled and shook her head, feeling that warm rush in her chest again. But before either could say more, Jason's phone buzzed. His expression changed as he glanced at the screen. "Everything okay?" Emily asked. He hesitated for a second before nodding. "Yeah, just an old friend checking in." But Emily noticed something in his tone, a slight unease, as if the message had reminded him of something he didn't want to face. On the drive back to Asheville, Jason grew quieter. Emily didn't press, but her mind kept wondering what that call had been about. When they reached home, he seemed distant, lost in thought. The next morning, she found him on the porch, sipping coffee and staring into the distance. "You've been quiet since last night," she said gently. Jason sighed. "There's something I didn't tell you." Before I came here, I was working on a project out west, a travel blog with a friend. Things went wrong. We lost our funding, and I kind of lost direction. That's why I came to Asheville. I needed a break, a reset. Emily listened quietly. You don't have to apologize for that, she said. Everyone needs to start over sometimes. He looked at her, surprised. You're not disappointed. Why would I be? She said softly. If anything, I'm proud of you for admitting it. Jason smiled faintly. You always know what to say, don't you? It's part of my job, she said, trying to lighten the mood. But her words carried more truth than she realized. She wasn't just helping him find calm, he was helping her find color in a life that used to be black and white. As the sun rose over the mountains that morning, Emily knew one thing for certain. Jason hadn't just turned her plans upside down, he had turned her world into something better, something alive. But deep inside, she also felt a quiet fear, because she knew that people who live without plans rarely stay in one place for long. The following month brought both excitement and uncertainty into Emily's life. Her new project in Charlotte was progressing beautifully, and her business had grown faster than she'd ever imagined. Yet, despite all her success, a quiet worry kept tugging at her heart. Jason. He had become such an important part of her days that the idea of him leaving made her chest tighten. Still, she tried to stay focused. One Friday morning, while preparing her notes for a client meeting, Emily found Jason sitting at the dining table with a letter in his hand. He looked thoughtful, even a little conflicted. Everything okay? She asked, setting down her planner. Jason hesitated before speaking. I got an offer, he said quietly. A friend I used to work with called. There's a travel documentary team starting a project in Seattle. They want me to join them. Emily's stomach sank, though she forced herself to stay calm. That's amazing, she said with a small smile. It's what you've always wanted, right? Maybe, he said, looking at her. But this time, it feels different. I don't want to walk away from everything I've found here. Emily looked at him, her heart beating faster. Jason, you don't have to choose because of me. You've always followed your own path. That's who you are. He sighed. Maybe. But lately, I've been thinking that maybe my path doesn't have to keep changing all the time. They stood in silence for a moment, the air heavy with unspoken words. Finally, Emily smiled softly and said, You've helped me see that life isn't about planning every detail. It's about letting things happen. So if you need to go, go. I'll be cheering you on. Jason looked at her for a long moment, his eyes reflecting both gratitude and sadness. You always make it sound so easy, he said quietly. It's not, she admitted. But I've learned that the best things in life happen when we let go of control. The following week passed too quickly. Jason helped her finalize some decorations for the Charlotte project, and together they visited all the places they'd grown fond of. The park, the old bookshop, the little cafe on the corner. On their last night, they sat on the porch again, the winter air crisp and the stars bright above them. Remember when you showed up with that duffel bag? Emily said, smiling faintly. You were my unexpected guest. I thought you'd ruin everything. Jason laughed softly. And now, she said, looking at him, I realize you were the best surprise I ever had. He smiled, and for a moment, neither spoke. The silence between them was full of understanding, and a touch of goodbye. The next morning, Emily drove Jason to the bus station. He placed his bag down and turned to her. You sure you're going to be okay without me messing up your schedule? He teased. She smiled through the lump in her throat. I'll manage. You're amazing, Emily. Don't forget that. And you, she said softly, don't forget that sometimes it's okay to stay. He nodded slowly. Maybe I'll find my way back here someday. I hope you do, she whispered. He hugged her, warm, steady, and full of everything words couldn't say. Then, with a final smile, he boarded the bus. Emily stood there until the bus disappeared down the road. The morning air felt still, almost too quiet. But for the first time, she didn't reach for her planner. She didn't need to write down what came next. Life would unfold in its own time, just as it should. Months passed. Emily's business continued to grow, her name spreading across cities for her creativity and calm under pressure. But sometimes, late at night, she'd glance at her front porch and remember the man who had changed everything without even trying. One spring afternoon, nearly 6 months later, she was hosting another event when a familiar voice came from behind her. "Need a hand, boss?" She froze, her heart leaping. Turning around, she saw him, Jason, smiling, standing there as if he'd never left.